Good morning and welcome to the City of Rochester Hills Fire Department headquarters. My name is Bill Cook, Assistant Chief of the Fire Department. It's my honor to stand in front of you today, along with the men and women of our organization and our elected officials, to welcome you here for a day of remembrance. A day to tribute for those that lost their lives and for all those that gave their lives. We remember that we will not forget. I thank you all for setting aside time from your busy schedules, and for taking a moment to pause and reflect upon the events that took place 18 years ago on September 11th, 2001, the day that has changed our lives forever. Four significant events occurred the morning of September 11th, 2001. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11, with a crew of 11 and 76 passengers, were flown into the North Tower of the World Trade Center by terrorists. This tower remained standing for 102 minutes, then collapsed at 10:28 a.m. At 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 with a crew of 9 and 51 passengers was flown into the South Tower of the World Trade Center by terrorists. This tower remained standing for 56 minutes and collapsed before the North Tower at 9:59 a.m. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77, with a crew of 6 and 53 passengers, was flown into the Pentagon by terrorists, creating a separate disaster in Arlington, Virginia. And at 10:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93, with a crew of 7 and 33 passengers, crashed into the ground near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, after passengers on the flight attempted to restrain terrorists. Nearly 3,000 victims lost their lives in these four attacks. These events created chaos, panic, and terror like that many have never experienced. Firefighters, emergency service personnel, and citizens were all tasked with many situations they never dreamed of having to face. They responded with speed, courage, and determination. They walked out of the ashes and walked right back in. Working past exhaustion, these individuals, knowing their brothers and sisters of humanity had perished, were able to maintain composure and complete the task at hand. First responders make life and death decisions each day for the safety and security of the citizens that they are sworn to protect. These decisions are not made for their own benefit, but for the innocent, for your families, for your friends, loved ones, and visitors of our communities. Our first responders here today are no different than those that made their choice to serve and protect the city of New York. These responders continue to make the choice in every decision they make to put their communities first and to help maintain the quality of life in the cities and townships they serve. Today, we are here to honor all the first responders that paid the supreme sacrifice, those who worked through the stress of these attacks, and celebrate them in our memories. No matter how hard we try, words simply cannot express the horror and shock we all feel over what took place in this nation on Tuesday, September 11, 2001. The 9/11 attacks will go down in our history as a day to remember. Let this memorial here behind me at our fire station headquarters provide us with a daily reminder to take nothing for granted, to cherish the time with our friends and families, to count our blessings, and to respect the freedoms we have as fellow Americans. Now, if you will please rise for the posting of our colors by the Rochester Hills Fire Department Honor Guard. Please remain standing for the singing of the national anthem by Ms. Sika Woodsworth from Oakland Community College.
Detail, present, off.
Oh, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Order. On.
Thank you. You may be seated. Now I'd like to take a moment to thank our elected officials for attending this morning. Representing Congresswoman Alyssa Stockland, Laura Murphy. Representing Senator Gary Peters' office, Robin Daniels. Oakland County Commissioner Adam Kokendorfer. Rochester Hills Mayor Brian Barnett. City Council President Mark Tisdall. City Council members Dr. Susan Boyer, Mr. Dale Hetrick, Jim Kubicina, and David Walker. Thank you all for attending this special event. We appreciate all of your commitments to prioritizing public safety and in honoring this day with us. I'd also like to thank and recognize our fellow emergency services partners. I see members from the Oakland County Sheriff's Office here, the City of Auburn Hills and Rochester Fire Departments. The City of Troy Fire Department is here today, and I believe Oakland Township Fire Department may be here as well. So I appreciate you all for taking time in attending today's event. Thank you for being here. Now with our opening remarks, I'd like to welcome Rochester Hills Mayor Brian Barnett to the podium.
Thank you for being here, and good morning, everyone. It's my privilege to welcome all of you on behalf of the City Council and the team members of the City of Rochester Hills and the 75,000 residents that call our city home here to Station 1 for our September 11th Remembrance ceremony. We come today to unite as Americans in a day now known as Patriot Day, to remember and to never forget the events and honor the heroes of September 11th, 2001. We remember and give honor to those who were injured or died as a result of these unthinkable terrorist acts, a day that my generation remembers as its Pearl Harbor. We remember with a heavy heart, but are reminded of the words of President George W. Bush as he encouraged us later that day by reminding us that this is not only a memory of loss and mourning, but it's also a memory of bravery and of self-sacrifice, and the love that lays down a life for a friend, even a friend whose name it never knew. Today we remember the lives that were taken in the attack, and remember the heroes, the brave first responders, the passengers of the flights, and the civilians compelled into action that gave their lives to save others. Now, yesterday I was in Washington, D.C., met with folks on both sides of the aisle, and I can tell you that there are very few things in this nation that everyone agrees on. But there are two stark reminders behind me of things that we should always agree on. The first is the flag that flies over my shoulder. It stands for so much, and so many have fought and given everything for it. I'm reminded that as it flies over our ceremony today, of all it represents. The second is the piece of mangled steel that sits behind me. That steel, exactly 18 years ago today, was still hundreds of feet in the sky in the New York air. It came crumbling down, as Assistant Chief Cook mentioned, just a few minutes later. This steel from one of the buildings, one of the trade centers, towers of the Trade Center, represents something as well. Represents the courage and the strength to build and to stand, and the resilience to respond in times of disaster. As we gather today, we're reminded that although there are things that separate us, there are certainly two strong symbols that should continue to unite us. So today, on the anniversary of September 11th, we call, pause, and stop to remember those heroes, to remember the grit, the resilience, and the resolve that shape the American spirit for which that flag represents. As President Harry Truman once said, America was not built on fear, rather, she was built on courage, on imagination, and an unbeatable determination to do the job at hand. Americans are brave, we're innovative, and we don't give up. We've countered fear and hate many times in our past with stronger forces, forces of strength, courage, compassion, of unity, of determination, and of hope. We stand together, remember, and will continue to take what was meant for evil and use it for good. We in this city will always honor the heroes of 9/11 and those that continue to follow in their footsteps and serve our community. We will never be the same after that incident, and we choose to never forget. So on behalf of our city, our residents, and our first responders, thank you for joining with us and for choosing to never forget. May God bless you, your families, and may God continue to bless the city of Rochester Hills. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Barnett. Now I'd like to welcome Oakland County Commissioner Adam Kokendorfer to the podium.
Thank you. Good morning. "18 years. That is how long we've been getting together every year on this day. But sometimes we get into the habit of repeating the same phrases, evoking the same images. At the beginning, we were fighting against terrorism. But as we approach the 20th anniversary, we face a new danger. Routine. It becomes easier and easier to think of this as just a historical event. Go down to the fire station, say the right things, go through the motions, check that box. We have to fight that urge with every ounce of our being. That's how we honor the lives that were lost that day. It's not just a tragedy in history. It's a warning for our present and a guide for our future. We learned lessons on that horrific day that we can't forget. Lessons on how to make our country more secure while preserving our freedoms. And we try, and sometimes we fail to strike that balance. But the lesson of 9/11 is that we can't stop trying. We owe it to those who are no longer with us. We owe it to our children who go off to school every day. We owe it to our spouses who go off to work. 9/11 isn't just a static event that happened 20 years ago. It is the living, breathing embodiment of the challenges that we still face today. That we can never forget. The good news is that we're Americans, and the past 2 decades have shown that we are more than up to that challenge. We will keep the spirit of September 12th alive. It's a spirit of hope and unity. We don't have to fall into the trap of routine and repetition. We can vow to never forget the losses before us, but also never forget the duties that we still owe to those around us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Kokendorfer. Now I'd like to welcome City Council President Mark Tisdall to the podium.
Good morning. Thank you, Fire Marshal Cook, Commissioner Kokendorfer, Mayor Barnett, my fellow council members, all first responders and residents that are here today. We're here today to make good on our promise to never forget those who lost their lives on September 11, 2001. We know the stories of tragedy and heroism. We know the stories of sadness and bravery. Still, the question is often asked, how could God let something like this happen? Jennifer Worth, a nurse and later author of the book called The Midwife, became a BBC television series, and you can binge watch it on Netflix today. Well, Jennifer Worth wrote, God isn't in the event, God is in the results after the event. We all think of the police, firefighters, and emergency medical personnel that ran toward the, quote, event, end quote, on September 11th. But God was in the results after the event for a long time to come. I'd like to share the story of the St. Paul Chapel located directly across the street from the World Center complex. As the towers collapsed, St. Paul Chapel became buried in its debris. As workers uncovered the chapel, it was discovered that absolutely zero damage from the World Trade Center collapse, not even a single broken pane of glass, had occurred. Amazed as everyone was, the St. Paul Chapel was immediately converted into an aid station for the rescue workers scouring the wreckage just across the street. In the first 3 months after the collapse of the towers, more than 3,000 rescue workers, police, firefighters, construction and sanitation crews, engineers, and technicians all crossed the street to rest, wash up, eat, get resupplied as they were working 12 to 18-hour days. New York residents donated groceries, soap, hand lotion, boots, gloves, socks, hard hats, aspirin, water, blankets, and more. Doctors, nurses, and podiatrists cut off the half-melted boots and treated injured feet. From the still smoldering ruins, clergy and counselors cared for the completely worn-out spirits, and musicians played Amazing Grace and Danny Boy at least once every day to comfort wounded souls. Workers and volunteers of every background and faith participated in the daily Episcopal prayers and Eucharist, Japanese Shinto, Native American peace pipes, Baha'i prayer, a Hanukkah service, Buddhist and Islamic chants, even a Mennonite choir performance. Over 300 area clergy volunteered to cover the daily services for those immersed in the sorrow and tragedy that was just across the street. Tom Garrity, a construction worker that cursed God because he lost his sister-in-law when the towers collapsed, found the St. Paul Chapel and said it was a kitchen, a therapy couch, a bedroom, an art gallery, a doctor's office, a place to get my thoughts and emotions back on track. Well, God isn't in the event. God is in the results after the event. As Mayor Barnett and Commissioner Kokendorfer said, we will never forget. May God bless our first responders, our military personnel, the city and residents of Rochester Hills, and our nation. Thank you.
Thank you, President Tisdale. Now please welcome our fire department chaplain, Deacon John Wright from St. Irenaeus Church.
Good morning, all. And many of us, no matter what tradition we may come from, try to follow the ways of Jesus or the ways of God in our lives. And the beginning, or one of the things that we can do, is follow the Gospel of John. Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there is in Jerusalem at the sheep gate a pool called in Hebrew Hebrew, Bethesda, with 5 porticos. In these lay a large number of ill, blind, lame, and crippled. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there, and knew that he had been there ill for a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. While I'm on my way, someone else gets down there before me." Jesus said to him, "Rise, take up your mat, and walk." Immediately, the man became well, took up his mat, and walked. As we gather here, we can focus on the gospel we just heard. We might just recall that Jesus saw the man who was ill and spoke to him. Do you want to be well? Translated, it's English, but translated, we can think about, what can I do to help you? How can I help you? That's what Jesus was saying to that man. The man lying there said that nobody was helping him, but Jesus helped him. You are all, no matter where you come from, the people that were there on 9/11 and the people that still go out to help people today, are helping those, and you notice them when you're called. Jesus noticed that man. It says in the gospel, he saw him. He noticed him. So continue to notice people that need help, because that's what all these great individuals, all of you, and all the people there at 9/11 were bound to do. They saw them, and they helped them. The man became well, as many did become well, and some went to the kingdom. And as they went to the kingdom, they were well because they were embraced by God. So we pray for us to remember that, and we pray for us to reach out and help those, as Jesus did with that man who couldn't get down to the pool. Let us bow our heads and pray for God's blessing. Loving and gracious God, divine protector, you are the source of our hope and the wellspring of our strength and courage. Our society needs and needed men and women of integrity, courage, common sense, and common decency who can provide protection and help at all times and in all places. You call and inspire the best in our society to accept a life built on the protection of others. We name these generous servants first responders, firefighters, emergency medical service personnel. They play and have played an indispensable role in building our nation by protecting our cities and neighborhoods and noticing people that need help. May all people of goodwill show their thanks and support for these courageous men and women who daily put themselves in harm's way as they protect others and notice others whom they may not know. We thank God for inspiring them to answer the call to serve, and we beg God on this day of remembrance to have courage when they are afraid, wisdom when they must make a split-second decision, inner strength when they are weary, and have compassion in their work. When the alarm sounds, we ask you, God, to help them faithfully serve you as they help all in their care and notice when people need them. We ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. And together we pray the prayer that Jesus taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Thank you, Deacon Wright. The signal 5555 has been used in the City of New York firehouses since 1870. It signals the death, generally of a colleague, and it tells firefighters to lower the American flag to half staff. Before computers, dispatchers communicated with firehouses using a series of rings and gave the location of a fire by a code assigned to the nearest intersection. A house watchman had to monitor the bells and decipher the message on paper. These days, the watchman monitors a computer screen, which gives the code for the intersection, the address, and the type of incident. The bells have been disabled, but a 5555 signal is still used. To this day, the code still has a meaning. The dispatcher will say on the radio that signal 5555 has been transmitted, and it is with regret that the department announces the death of a firefighter. Today, the Rochester Hills Fire Department will sound the signal 5555 in honor of the members of the City of New York Fire Department, the New York City Police Department, and the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. The 411 emergency personnel service personnel who lost their lives 18 years ago today. Rest easy, brothers and sisters. Now, if you all please rise for the honoring of the colors and the playing of taps by Ellie Bitabo from Rochester High School.
Detail, present, up. Order, on.
Thank you all. You can please take your seat. Now I'd like to introduce the Chief of Fire and Emergency Services for today's closing remarks. Fire Chief Sean Canto.
Morning. 18 years ago today, 2,996 individuals representing 90 different countries lost their lives. Since that time, several others have lost their lives to the side effects of that day. Long after the dust settled in lower Manhattan, thousands of volunteers, emergency service workers, and New York City residents are still feeling the effects of 9/11, not only in their hearts, but their minds and bodies as well. This day is not only a great sadness for the country and the world, but holds a special place in the heart of emergency service personnel. As the sun set on September 11th, 343 New York City firefighters, 23 New York City police officers, 37 Port Authority police officers, and 8 EMS workers paid the supreme sacrifice while operating at Box 8087 Church and Vesey Streets, also known as the World Trade Center. Additionally, since that time, 200 more firefighters have died because of 9/11 related conditions. As firefighters, police officers, emergency service workers responded to the events of 9/11, it was apparent prior to their arrival that numerous people were trapped and or dying, and the task in front of them was likely going to be the most difficult they ever encountered, and never once did they waver in their sense of duty. On September 11, 2001, the FDNY responded with hundreds of members to the epicenter of the disaster at the World Trade Center. Brothers and sister firefighters ascended the stairwell of the towers, knowing several floors above them fire raged out of control and hundreds of occupants were trapped and dying. Systems designed to help prevent and protect the building were inoperable, and those members found themselves in a fight with the odds stacked against them, but continued to push forward, knowing they may never return. Firefighters like Chief Oriel Palmer, Battalion 7, Fire Marshal Ronald Buca, and Lieutenant Joseph Levy. Soon after the planes hit the South Tower at 9:03, Battalion Chief Palmer moved into the building with Chief Burns. Although most of the elevators were inoperable, they did find one that went to the 41st floor, which was halfway to the impact zone. They were going to have to walk the rest of the way. The impact zone spanned from the 77th to the 85th floor. When an audio tape communications were released with the firefighters, it revealed that firefighters did not anticipate the building collapsing. Battalion Chief Palmer issued an order to one of his subordinates and was recorded seconds before the building collapsed. Peter Hoffer describes Palmer's professionalism during the final moments of his life. Listening to Chief Palmer and his comrades on the recovered tape, one can only hear the urgency of the men and women working at high efficiency, but there was never a hint that the clock was running out on them. The tapes were made public, and Battalion Chief Palmer's brother-in-law, FDNY Lieutenant McCaffrey, stated, "It was emotional sitting with my wife and sister-in-law listening to those tapes." You're hearing him right at the point prior to the collapse about the things he saw on the 78th floor. Before that, we didn't even know how high it got. We thought it was stopped at the 40th. When Chief Palmer reached the 75th floor, he reported meeting with the fire marshal in the stairwell. That official was Mr. Buca. The two men were well ahead of the other firefighters in the building. Mr. Buca was very fit like Chief Palmer, both marathon runners, and were active in the Army Reserve. As they passed other survivors from the impact zone, Chief Palmer informed the fire officers on the lower floor about their injuries. Battalion Chief Garrity of Battalion 9, who had come to the 44th floor, calling down for firefighters with medical training. Chief Palmer also found an obstruction in the stairway and was told the trailing fire companies how to get around it. He asked Chiefs below him to find an elevator that would reach the 76th floor. Those heard that on the tape being said. When Chief Palmer radioed from the 78th floor, he sounded slightly out of breath, perhaps from exertion or perhaps from the sight of all the people whose moment before were waiting for an elevator and now are dead. Numerous 1045 code ones, Palmer said, using the fire department's radio term for a deceased person. At that point, the building would be standing for just a few more minutes, as the fire was weakening the structure on the floors above him. Even so, Chief Palmer could only see 2 pockets of fire and called for a pair of engine companies to fight them. Today we will share that audio, the details, the last moments these brave individuals lived as they pushed to rescue individuals trapped in the tower. As you will hear, the audio abruptly stops as the South Tower collapses at 9:59.
What floor are you on? 48 right now. Alright, just walk in, we're coming up behind you. Guys, over, you want me to realize? Yes, Steve, tell people of Palmer, they got reports that there's more planes in the area. We may have to back down here. 747 out for the 7. Take cover, stay in the stairwell. That's 4. 15 to 15, Bruce, that plane is ours. I repeat, it's ours. What floor are you on, Scotty? 54. Alright, keep making your way up. We're behind you. That's all. 15 OB. 15 OB. Alright, Tommy, listen carefully. I'm sending all the injured down to you on 40. You're going to have to get them down to the elevator. There's about 10 to 15 people coming down to you. Okay. 10 civilians coming down. 15 OB. Got that. I'm on 40 right now. Well, Tommy, when you take people down to the lobby, try to get an EMS crew back. Definitely. I couldn't find a bank to bring me up there any higher. I'm on the 40th floor. What can I do for you? We're going to have to host it. I'm on 69 now, so we need a higher bank, please. What stairway are you in, also? It's down on the building, boys. Attack 1 Alpha. Battalion 7, right on the side of the roof. Battalion 9 to Battalion 7. Battalion 9. Oh, yeah, I'm going to try to get a couple of CFRD engines on the 40th floor, so send any victims down here outside the staging area. Hey, the fireman said I thought it was the party. If we get 2 more cars into the gun run, we'll be all right. 15 to Battalion 7. Colorado 15. What do you got up there, Steve? I'm still in boys stairway, 74th floor, no smoke or fire problem. The walls are breached, so be careful. Yeah, 10-4, I saw that on 68. We're on 71, we're coming up behind you. That's 10-4, which floor are we going? Let me know when you see Chief Fire. Marshal on 75. 15 to 15 OV. 15 to 15 OV. 15 OV. Tommy, have you made it back down to the lobby yet? The elevator's screwed up. You can't move it? I don't want to get stuck in this chair. Tommy, it's imperative that you try to get down to the lobby command post and get some people up to 40. We got injured people up here on 70. If you make it to the lobby command post, see if they can somehow get elevated past the 40th floor. We got people injured all the way up here. 7 over the 7. Yeah, Chief, I'm on 5-5. I got a rest. I'll try to get up there as soon as possible. Anybody see the Highway 1 car? Highway 1 car. We need it for an escort to the hospital for a fireman. Battalion 7? 4-5? 1-5 to 1-5 roof and iron. Battalion 60 command post. Battalion 7 Alpha. Ready, come on over. Ready, come on over by us. We got two. I joined the pocket to fire. We'll see if we ever knock it down with 2 lines. Radio that. 78th floor. Number 1045, go on. What's there, Oreo? 7 Alpha will now be command post. 1-5 to the Chinese 7. 1-5. Chief, what stair you in? South Stair, Adam. South Tower. 478. That's all here. So much civilians. We have 2 engines up here. All right, 10-4, we're on our way. Battalion 7, ladder 1-5. 1-5. I'm going to need 3 firefighters. Adam, stay away to knock down 2 fires. We got a house line cut. We can get some water on it. Knock it down, okay? All right, 10-4, we're coming up with chairs. We're on 77 now in the beach scale. I'll be right to you. 171, we're coming right up. Division 3, lobby command to the Steelcom command post. Hey, Operations Tower 1 to the floor above Battalion 9. Battalion 9 to command post. Battalion 7, Operations Tower 1 to Battalion 9. I need you on the floor above 79. We have access stairs going up to 79. Okay. I'm on my way up, Oreo. 15 OV to 15. Battalion 15 OV, Battalion 7, Operations Tower 1. Stuck in the elevator shaft. You're going to have to get a different elevator. We're chopping through the wall to get out. Radio lobby command with that. Tower 1. Battalion 7, ladder 1-5.
Chief Agri Croker of the FDMI Road.
Firefighters are going to get killed. When they join the department, they face that fact. When someone becomes a firefighter, their greatest act of bravery has been accomplished. What they do after that is all in the line of work. They were not thinking of getting killed when they went to where death lurked. They went there to put the fire out and got killed. Firefighters do not regard themselves as heroes because they do what business requires. Today, the Rochester Hills Fire Department affirms to those killed 18 years ago today. Rest easy, brothers and sisters. Your tour is over and you've been called home. Thank you. If you would join us in placing the 411 American flags, symbolizing the individual emergency responders that died on this day 18 years ago. And after a brief reflection, join us in our classroom for some refreshments. Thank you.